Welcome, everybody. Hello, hello. Hello, all. Tonight we got TikTok, we got YouTube, and a bunch of other ones there, too. But I'm going to wait a sec. Hey, you're the first person to join. Thanks, guys. Cinder and Poppy and others on YouTube. On TikTok, and the YouTube folks as well. Hey, everybody. I was sort of following the discussion on YouTube, the chat you guys were having. Oh, and my computer is on in the... Apparently, 1 second, I got to turn off my other computer that's beaming this live. And my computer is on. Oh, that was funny. Oh, that was a little technical difficulty. Apparently, I had YouTube on my other computer, and it was beaming it at me. It scared the hell out of me. Hello, everybody. As always, if you don't mind just sort of saying where you're all from, I think it's kind of a nice way just to introduce folks. And yeah, Sasha says hi. She's she's back in her. Actually, you've got a Sasha update. Actually, both of you do. On TikTok, that's Sasha there. On YouTube, that's Sasha there. You can just see her little black nose. She's resting in her Gigantex bed. And for everybody who's new here, we'd like to take a minute just to let folks join, because it takes a second for people on TikTok and YouTube both to get the notice that this is going on. Hello, Alberta, Alabama, Georgia, Canada, UK, always Malta. That's always fun. Pete Buttigieg's family's from Malta. His father, born there, I believe. But yeah, we'll take another minute, guys, just to get folks in here. Ireland, nice. We'll give it just another sec. Got a lot of news today. Not all bad, I will say, which is nice. It's kind of a mix. Things are definitely heating up, though. As I said, well, maybe I'll start. Yeah, I'll start to do my introduction stuff now. As always, as I told you, we're on multiple channels, particularly YouTube and TikTok. We've got a whole new slew of moderators on both. Obviously, they're volunteering their time, so be nice to them. And obviously, for the moderators, I don't expect you to do this. Just if you happen to be coming that day for the broadcast and you want to moderate at the same time, that's great. But there is no pressure to do this. So there's that. As I always say, for all the creators you have, follow them, like their products, like the videos they put out there. And if you can, share and comment their content as well, because it helps tell TikTok and Twitter and everybody else that their content matters. And the computer literally puts it in front of more people that way. Also, for the YouTube folks, actually, well, TikTok, you already know. The TikTok folks, you know, when you do all those cute little things, it's funny, some of the YouTubers don't like it, but when you do the cute little hats and stuff, you're actually giving me a donation at the same time. So thank you for doing that. And for the YouTubers, you can do super stickers, which are akin to the TikTok thing. And it's just a cute little sticker thing that pops up, and it's a donation you're actually making to me. You can find it via the little $sign at the bottom of your comment box. You can touch the $sign now. It's not going to do anything automatically. Don't worry. But you'll see super stickers, and super chat is how you can actually send me a message or a question, preferably, that will stick to the screen. And what I promise in doing this for the I wish TikTok had this. For the super sticker questions, I will make a point of getting to them all as long as we don't go for like 3 hours. And on TikTok, I'll still go back and forth and grab some TikTok questions too. So we'll get all of you guys. Let me dive right in. Oh, actually, so the final thing is, as I said, I appreciate when you thank you, by the way, someone just gave me a little bullseye. When you do that, because what I've decided is I'm going to do this full time from now on until hopefully the war is over and things work out well for Ukraine. But I'm spending my entire day just covering Ukraine on TikTok for you guys, and YouTube, of course, too. So if you can help me out, I appreciate it. I work on my own. Nobody pays me to do stuff. All right, let's jump into the news. So some good news, first of all. Washington Post's, this is from the Washington Post's defense reporter. And that was cute. Defense reporter says, as reported elsewhere, there is a Ukrainian effort afoot to retake terrain they had lost to Russia. The Pentagon isn't commenting on specific locations, but senior defense officials say we're starting to see indications that Ukraine is now able and willing to take back territory. What they mean is we've now shifted. Actually, the celebration stuff they just put on TikTok is appropriate for this, because it means things have shifted, that Ukraine is all of a sudden starting to go on the offensive. Now, again, this is going to be a long war. Russia is intentionally blowing the hell out of the civilians. It's not as if Ukraine is going to win this tomorrow. It's not as if Ukraine is ever going to win it. I don't know whether they will. But the fact that they're starting to pick their battles is very interesting, and it's very bad news for Russia. So that's good. And Jennifer and Kate, thank you for those, by the way. Now, other interesting news. This I just saw literally before coming on. Russia appears to have attacked its own oil refinery today in eastern Ukraine. It's in a town that I could never pronounce, so I'm not even going to try to do it. But it's in the eastern area of Ukraine. It's an oil refinery, and apparently the refinery is owned by Rosneft, which is the, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the Russian, the big Russian state-owned oil company. And it looks like a Russian fighter plane attacked, blew it up, and now the fire people are trying to put it out. I mean, it's not good if Ukraine loses an oil refinery, but it's pretty ironic that Russia may have just blown up its own oil refinery. Also interesting, in the last couple of days we've been talking about all the generals who have been killed by the Ukrainians, all the Russian generals, and how the latest number is they're saying about 5. It's a very large number. I mean, that is considered a huge number of generals to be killed. And one of the reasons they were saying today is because the Russians' communications are down. Cecil, thank you for that. Or Cecil, I don't know if it's Cecil or Cecil, but thank you. I don't know if it's because their communications are down or co-opted, but the generals cannot get communications from the front lines. They don't know what's going on. So the generals are having to go to the front lines, the Russian generals, and put themselves in harm's way, and they're getting killed. Now, the other thing we've talked about repeatedly has been that the Russians made a huge mistake by blowing up the 3G and 4G cell towers in Ukraine, thinking they were killing the communications for the Ukrainians, and they were, but they were also killing communications for themselves because Russia's secure communication network it uses for its military when it's in the battle uses the 3G and 4G cell towers of the country they're invading. So they blew up the Ukrainian towers that they needed for their own secure encrypted communications, and that means that now they're having to use unencrypted, meaning like whatever, walkie-talkies, whatever it is that the Ukrainians are listening into. And they also think that's some of the reasons some of the generals have been killed, because quite literally the Ukrainians listened to where they were, they pinpointed it and sent a missile while the guy was on the phone. And Kat, thank you as well. Okay, bad news. We've got a number of bad freaky-ish news today, which I'll just jump right in. So there's been a lot of talk about nuclear war, and obviously that's scary. I'm going to start off right away and say I think there's a lot of BS going around with regards to Russia psychological warfare trying to scare people. So I would not get scared. It is worrisome because it's reckless what Russia is doing, excuse me, but I would not get scared yet, especially because in the last day, 2 different times now, official Russian sort of mouthpieces. For some reason, my mind was going to French. I was going to say porte-parole. When you're like broadcasting, you get worried. Words don't come to you. The Russian sort of mouthpieces have used this nuclear war threat, which is very interesting. And what they did, last night, and I put the video on my TikTok, but last night, the Russia One, one of the big TV stations in Russia, it's a dictatorship. Nothing's free. These are government controlled. And thank you, Irop. Or no, Irop, or it could be Iror, because I see the last name is Mudria, or Mudri, excuse me. I don't have my glasses now to see them. 1 second, quick, guys. Mudri. Thank you. Igor. Igor. I'm sorry. Igor Mudri. Thank you, Igor. I appreciate that. I did study Russian for a year, so I'm decent at reading the alphabet, but most of the words, other than Zdravstvuyte and Privyet, I'm not so good. So here's what's going on. So last night, Russia One has a TV show, and all of their talking heads get together, and basically they decided to talk about different ways they could nuke the West. It was crazy. They were talking about let's drop a nuclear bomb on Germany, and we can drop one on Poland too. Thank you. Drop one on Poland too, and we can invade and grab a piece of land connecting Russia to Kaliningrad, which is this small territory north of Poland, south of Lithuania, and then we can steal some land from Lithuania and Estonia. It was insane. They were threatening to nuke everybody, and they were all talking about it like it was just such a normal thing. Bah, no big deal. Now, put this in a law and juxtapose this with what happened this afternoon. Christiane Amanpour, CNN, right? Their very august international correspondent. She interviews Dmitry Peskov, who is the Kremlin spokesman. And she asks him about this nuclear stuff and says, are you willing to sort of forswear nuclear weapons, that you're not going to start a nuclear war? Well, what he says, and I thought this was very interesting, he says, basically, we reserve the right to use nuclear weapons in an existential threat. Now, everyone's freaking out thinking he's going, oh my God, he's talking about nukes too. Well, I heard that, and I actually did some Googling and found this. I looked up the Russian war doctrine for when they use nukes. And it was a number of different things like somebody fires nukes on them first, they fire nukes back, right? That kind of thing. Well, the fourth reason for the doctrine is the country has been basically overrun, and as a last resort, they fire nukes to stop the enemy from taking over the entire country. So what Peskov was saying, what I heard him saying, was if the United States were to nuke Russia, and Russia was literally going to cease to exist with 50 nuclear weapons coming down, they would fire back. Well, that's not new. I mean, we knew that, right? And that is mutual assured destruction. It's the doctrine that has existed for, God, the 70 years or so that we've had nuclear weapons, where if you attack us, we attack you. If we attack you, you attack us. So first of all, relax a little, because what Peskov said was simply reiterating standard doctrine. If the U.S. nukes them, they're going to nuke us back. Well, okay, we're not going to nuke them, so I'm not too worried. What interests me is that he said that right after Russia won. The TV show made the weird comments about how easily it would be to nuke Germany and Estonia and Poland and all this crazy stuff. They're trying to freak you out. I mean, that's what's going on. They're trying to freak us out. I have said this from day one. I think there's always something to be worried about when the Russians talk like this, because it's irresponsible. And you don't, as a major power, you do not blithely talk about nuking another country, because what it does is it makes you nervous, it makes me nervous, and guess what it does? It makes people at the Pentagon nervous. So all of a sudden, and thank you, Rebecca, for that, all of a sudden you've got people at the Pentagon saying, well, Putin says he's going to, or even forget the Pentagon, Poland. You've got Poland sitting there going, well, Putin says he's going to nuke us. We see a weapon coming that looks like a nuke. Maybe we need to fight. No, they don't have nukes, but maybe they should fire something at Moscow, right? I mean, it heightens the tensions and makes people a little more trigger happy, or not even trigger happy, but trigger nervous is maybe the word to use it, right? That's the problem with using this kind of language. But I think this goes back to what we said at the very beginning with Russia, is they were trying to freak us out. They talked about World War III. They talked about nuclear war. And anybody who's watched my broadcast before, my lives, I've talked before about how it is, I think President Biden has done an amazing job getting the international coalition together. But I object very strongly to him repeating Putin's talking point about World War III, saying if we got involved in a war with Russia, it would be World War III. Because in American English, World War III is a euphemism for the end of the world, the apocalypse. And I think we're simply buying into Putin's message. And in essence, we're scaring our own population into thinking, oh boy, we better not do anything more in Ukraine or it's going to be the end of the world. Well, that only sets things up nicely for Putin, right? Because he doesn't want us to do anything more. Oh, that's interesting. I'll put it on the screen. Casey says, Seattle Times had an article about this. Seattle Times, bombs that could turn Ukraine into a nuclear war, the smaller bombs. Yeah, for my YouTube folks, TikTok, you can't see it, but Casey posted an article that's in the Seattle Times talking about how tactical nuclear warheads could potentially lead to a larger war. Tactical nuclear warheads are quite simply small nuclear bombs. We're all familiar with the concept, and you kind of imagine a nuclear bomb being blowing up a city or something, right? What you don't realize is they've got small ones that they can use like in lieu of artillery shells. I don't personally quite understand, what you'd be using it for, but it's not exactly what you would use for going after a big city. It's a small one, and it allows you to kind of use a nuke, not kill that many people. It's still gross, obviously, what we're talking about, but it's this weird way of incrementally doing it that isn't overwhelming, and all of that. So anyway, Siege of Mariupol. That's the second big topic of today. So Mariupol, Mariupol, southern Ukraine, key city. The Russians have been destroying it for 2 weeks. I'll go through a list of the things they've done, and when I do, you're going to go, oh, it's that. Well, I'll tell you right now, the maternity ward. Oh, sorry. I'll tell really quick. Asking about the emails for mods, I got like 50 emails for people offering to moderate. So I was able to pick several of you from TikTok and YouTube, but I didn't get through them all because literally it's 50 emails. And I'm trying to sort of follow up by email with folks to also make sure they're real, because we had who I believe to be a Russian as one of my TikTok mods before. I made that mistake once. So I apologize. I haven't been able to get back to everybody. So thank you for that. So Mariupol. Mariupol is the town where the Russians bombed the maternity ward. Okay? Now you know that town. Remember the children's hospital with the maternity ward, the woman who was carted out on the stretcher, pregnant, injured. She subsequently died. Her baby died. That's Mariupol. Well, the Russians have had this town under siege for at least 2 weeks. No water, no food, no heat or electricity or gas. It has been freezing there. It's finally getting a little warmer. I checked the weather today. The highs are getting into the 40s for Americans in Celsius. I think that might be 3 or 4 degrees maybe. The low is freezing. So imagine your house has been in freezing weather for 2 weeks practically, right? Very bad. What in other things they did in Mariupol, and then I'm going to tell you why I bring this up, because they've gone one step further today, the Russians have. They fired on buses with kids. That 4 kids were injured, 1 critically. They bombed an art school with 400 people seeking refuge inside. You know about the maternity ward that they bombed? They kidnapped 62,000 Ukrainians from Mariupol alone and took them into Russia, which is just horrific. They threatened military tribunals. I'm going to put Tasha's question on the screen, and I'll get to it in a sec. They 2 days ago they didn't threaten. They declared if the civilians and the military did not abandon the town as of 2 days ago in the morning, 5 a.m., they were going to treat everybody as an enemy combatant and put them up in front of a military tribunal. And what Russia has done in the past with military tribunals, it is quite literally, they arrest you, they have a trial on the spot, they line you up and they shoot you. And they said they're going to do this to every member of the military. In other words, you're not even going to be a prisoner of war if you're a member of the military. They're just going to execute you. And every woman and child in that city who's a civilian is also going to be lined up and executed. I mean, this is the extreme of what these people are doing. Now, what finally happened today, the Russians are now also bombing that city by sea. They've got boats in place that are bombing Mariupol. 90% of the city is apparently already destroyed. There are still several 100,000 people trapped there, and it's just abominable. I did a video earlier today because I saw somebody on Twitter talking about the guy behind this in Russia and how people should remember his name. His name is Colonel General Mikhail Mizintsev. It's Mizintsev, Mizintsev. And if you Google him, you'll see. He's the guy that's in charge of the war in the south with Mariupol, and he's the guy that was also in charge of Russia's war in Syria. And we all know about the chemical weapons use, the other war crimes, attacking civilians, all the things they did in Syria that we're afraid, short of chemical weapons, they have done in Ukraine. Now, let me do a quick question from Tasha. Hopefully I got something on you. Have you heard anything about people not supporting Zelensky prior to the war? As a USA citizen, it seems like he's the type of leader the world needs. Depends what you mean. Have you heard anything about people not supporting Zelensky prior to the war? My suspicion, at least in the United States, look, Ukraine is not a big topic in the United States generally. Obviously, today it's the topic, right? It's the number one topic on our news. But generally speaking, it's not a big story here. We're more European focused, things like that. When I say European focused, I mean traditionally European for us. My family being Greek, my neighbor being Italian, the French, the Germans. Western Europe is probably the better way of phrasing it. So my suspicion is Americans thought of him as that country that elected a comedian. To be honest, I don't think we knew much about him, but I think we thought of it that way. We also knew about him because of the issue that came up with Trump and the weapons and all that issue, which I don't want to go into too much detail because so far we've been very good about keeping these discussions nonpartisan because I think it's important, or bipartisan. It's important for Republicans, Democrats, left and right to all support Ukraine in this. So I don't want to get into it, but I think there was just the impression of, he was this leader over there. He was a comedian, who knows? And now he's considered, I heard today on TV, they were talking about him like he's Winston Churchill. I mean, quite literally, they invoked Winston Churchill repeatedly on TV today, on CNN. The impression of him is amazing right now. Now, the other big issue I wanted to get into, and then I've just got a couple little issues and we're done. I mean, we can do our Q&A. Belarus. Okay, which I call Belarus, and I have to tell you, I studied the Soviet Union in graduate school. It still existed, and I still can't figure out why, but I was taught that the region or the country was Belarus, and the people were Belarusian. Now I'm told it's Belarus and Belarusian, and people who heard me say Belarus thought I was crazy. So I don't know. If anybody's an expert on this stuff, tell me why I was taught Belarus, because I don't think I'm crazy. I know that's what I was taught. In any case, Belarus is, you've got Ukraine. Let's pretend Ukraine's a square, more or less. Here in the northwest, you've got Poland. Then above, north and to the west, so north of Ukraine, you've got Belarus. East of Belarus, still north of Ukraine, you've got Russia, right? So Belarus is one of the areas. It's a independent country. It's basically a Russian puppet state that is run by a dictator named Lukashenko. His people are not happy with him. They've had a bit of a revolt in the past, and he is not a popular leader. He's a dictator. Putin helped keep him in charge. Well, Putin used Belarus to launch some of his troops into Ukraine. That was one of the 4 fronts that Putin used. He came his troops through Belarus in the north. He came in the northeast to Kharkiv through Russia. He came through Russia in the southeast through those territories that Putin is claiming are independent, and he's going to claim as part of Russia. And then he came in through the south in Crimea, which is the territory that Russia stole from Ukraine back in 2014. The concern now is that Belarus, there is chatter, as people sort of say in intelligence circles, about Belarus entering the war, and that Putin wants them to enter the war because he's not doing well. Whether you want to call it a stalemate or I don't know what, but as we said earlier in the show, the Ukrainians are starting to fight back. They're starting to get, they got a key town of Makariv back today that's considered a key strategic town. The Ukrainians got it back. Now they may lose it again, but this is David versus Goliath. The Ukrainians shouldn't be getting any towns back. I mean, at this point, right? Something's clearly wrong with what Russia's doing. So the Russians now have lost so many troops to the Ukrainians. They've lost so much weapons. Their logistics support is so bad. Their troops are not getting food and water. Their troops are not getting ammunition. Their troops are not getting fuel for their trucks. And their trucks are falling apart because of the tires, and because Ukraine is turned now into one big mud pile because it's spring. The Russians need help. So the thought is they may get the Belarusians to invade on the west. And what that would do, and it's very, in our, from watching the news today, our sort of intelligence and defense people in NATO all disagree. Some of the NATO folks think it might happen. Some of our Defense Department folks here in America think it may not happen. But the concern is Belarus invades, and they're able, in the West, and they're able to cut off Ukraine from Poland. Now, nobody knows for sure how the West is getting the weapons into Ukraine, but we're assuming a lot of it's coming through Poland. So that's the concern with Belarus there. No other news on that. It is expected the Belarusian people would not be very happy about their country going into this war. The dictator is not popular, and the military would probably not be terribly thrilled about it either, let alone once the body bags start coming home because people are being killed. So who knows? Then again, we're dealing with dictatorships, and one dictator, Putin, could tell the other dictator, Lukashenko, I put you in power, I can take you out of power, do it. So there's still that concern. Now, let me look really quick. Franny McDowell asks, hey, John, do you think that Russia is talking about nuclear war because they ultimately want to use them? I don't trust anything they say. Well, that is the big question. For sure, I guarantee you for sure, Russia's talking about nuclear war because they're trying to scare all of us. I guarantee you that is part of it. It doesn't mean it's the only reason, but since I was studying it when it was back to the Soviet Union, they would always talk about how they would just talk about nuclear war. They were trying to they were trying to scare peace activists in the West, and just scare everybody into thinking it was the end of the world and it's better to disarm or at least put pressure on our governments in the disarmament talks. Whatever it was to put pressure on the left in Europe and the left in America and frankly the left worldwide to push for peace, which meant accept some of Moscow's conditions in the arms talks and things like that. Or right now with Ukraine, thank you. Right now with Ukraine, to get us to not arm Ukraine more, to not give them the MiG fighter jets, to not send them surface-to-air missiles, right? Or whatever, but to scare us into thinking, oh boy, if we go too far, Russia's going to hurt us, Russia's going to use nukes. So clearly they're trying to freak us out. The question becomes whether they're serious. I actually don't think they're serious, but I do think because of the way they're talking, things could, somebody could do something by accident. And I worry about that. But I also think and I'll sort of finish your question with this and then finish with this real quick. But if if Russia's serious about using nuclear weapons, and they're seriously considering it, and they're seriously saying, hey, we just might, then we've got a bigger problem on our hand that isn't going to be solved by just sitting back and saying, well, let him take Ukraine. At least he didn't get the rest of us. If he's really thinking of using nuclear weapons and they're really thinking, hey, we could do it against Poland and Lithuania and Germany too, then we've got a way bigger problem that isn't going to be solved by simply letting Putin take Ukraine. He's going to go after other countries. He's if he really was going to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine, then why wouldn't he use it next time in Poland, right? So I think as much as our side, I think, as I said, I think Biden, I love Biden, but on this I don't. I think he's bought in a little too much to Putin's rhetoric, and us sitting out of this war is not necessarily preventing a future war. That's my fear. All right, let me, good news. Two good news and a bad news, and then we're back to your questions. So Europe, I forgot what it's called, but some kind of European zoo association, zoo and aquarium association, has donated $630,000 to Ukrainian zoos. That was something on the order of 500,000 euros or so. But the zoos in Ukraine have been in real trouble because no one's going, obviously. So they're not getting money from from people coming. And the poor animals. I saw a picture today at one of the zoos in Kharkiv that showed a llama or an alpaca, and literally standing on the grass, really happy, next to this incoming mortar shell or something that didn't explode, and it was in the grass next to the animal. I mean, it was just horrifying. So, God bless the Europeans for chipping in on that. I care a lot about animals, and I care about people, but I'm happy that aid is going to animals too. I think they matter as well. And it's a mark of how good of people we are. I had an old Greek uncle who said this to me once, and I think it had to be him. I think this was my uncle my uncle in Greece was the foreign minister, defense minister, UN ambassador, and deputy prime minister under Papandreou I back in the 1980s with the PASOK. Anyway, very famous uncle. And he was visiting us once in Chicago. And I remember he told me something on, you can always judge a man's heart or his heart and his soul by how he treats animals. And I remember it being such an interesting thing, just an interesting concept, and it stuck with me. I mean, I was probably 8 years old, or not 8. At that point, I would have been 18 years old at that point, but it just stuck with me, So, Misha defected with a tank. This is good news. So there's a report out of Ukraine. So the Ukrainians, in an effort to get the Russians to defect, found out or discovered that the Russians were using Ukrainian SIM cards, the little cards that go in your cell phone. Now, some of this is probably because we know the Russian troops have been stealing phones from people. Every time they stop civilians on the street, they break into their homes, they arrest them, they take their cell phones and they take their computers. Well, they've been using the cell phones for communications because, again, remember, they screwed up their encrypted communications, so they have nothing else to use. So they're using Ukrainian cell phones. Well, partially that, and partially I think they just had Ukrainian SIM cards. The Ukrainians figured out what phones the Russians are using, and they keep sending out text messages telling them how to defect and telling them, here's a number to call. We'll give you $10,000 for each tank you bring. And a guy named Misha calls them, a Russian calls them named Misha, and says, okay, I want to defect. Where do I go? They set it up. They apparently sent him to a certain location. They used a drone to fly over to make sure he was for real, that it wasn't a booby, a trap, an ambush. Figured he was alone. They came down. They got him. They got the tank. Misha is now in basically protective custody. They said he's got a nice apartment. He's got food. He's got water. He's got a shower, a kitchen, and they're going to guarantee him when the war is over. They're giving him $10,000 US and fast track to Ukrainian citizenship. The other interesting thing he had said, he was alone with the tank, and I don't know, MT, if you or the other guys know. I want to say tank crews are usually like 3 or 4 men, more or less. Usually it's not one guy running a tank. He said that the other men running his tank had already left his unit and just fled back to Russia, fled back to their homes. They just quit. They'd had enough and got out of there. And he was just there with the abandoned tank, didn't know what to do. So he called the Ukrainians. That's pretty cool. The one bit of bad news that I'll finish with, because this really annoyed me, was Renault, the French automaker, today reopened its plant in Moscow. Now, Renault is the majority owner, the controlling ownership of the Russian automaker Avtovaz. And Renault had closed for several weeks, saying supply problems, whatever. Well, they opened up again. I mean, in the middle of all of this, Renault opened up again. Now, I will say 10% of Renault's revenue comes from Russia. So they're legitimately concerned about their business. But you know what? I'm legitimately concerned about 43 million Ukrainians being killed. So Renault, let Renault have it is what I'm telling you folks on Twitter and elsewhere. And the final thing. I talked to Vlad today. He's going to check in tomorrow with all the details, but he's going to give me a money count tomorrow. For anybody who's new here, a friend of mine in Ukraine he interviewed him on the show a couple of weeks ago about the situation. He had to flee his town. He's still in Ukraine because men aren't allowed to leave. His wife and daughter, his mother-in-law and great mother-in-law, I guess it would be, all of them together got them out of Kharkiv, which is the town in the northeast that's just getting, again, blasted like everything else. They're in the southwest in a refugee town that tripled from 100,000 people normally to 300,000+ people now. They're still staying in a hotel that's costing them $100 a night. People were surprised when I mentioned that story because they thought for the refugees it's free. It's not free. Everyone has stopped doing Airbnbs, he said, in their area because things are so what was I going to say? I'm looking at the screens. I'm talking to you guys. The money. People are so afraid of not getting money that they don't want it electronically anymore. They want cash. And the one thing that still counts as cash is his PayPal credit card because it's a debit card. And apparently, so like if you have a debit card, it can still work, but otherwise they want cash. So Airbnbs. Anyway, bottom line is he was in dire need. We did a quick fundraiser for him. And I told you guys, if you put in more than he needed, he was going to find other people in the area. You put in way more than he needed. The last tally was around 12,000 a couple days ago. I'm sure it's much more than that now. And he updated me today on even more families he's helping. He's going to get a bigger place now that can fit him, his family, and other people who can move in with him now. He's helped a couple other families. I forgot all the stories of families he's been helping. It's great, though. It's just great. So he's been helping a lot of people. He's going to give us an update tomorrow. And I think he even said that he did one video thanking you guys with his daughter just to show you that he's real. But he also, I think he's going to do another family tomorrow that's going to put out a thank you as well. So thanks for that, guys. I still have Vlad's PayPal in my 1 second here. I'll put it for YouTube. For YouTube, you can, I should have written Vlad's PayPal as an email, sorry. But you can go to the email address on the screen. That is the the URL on the screen. It's the same URL, web address that the TikTok folks will find in my profile. It's the link that says beacons.ai. When you click on that, scroll around, and one of the links you'll see, I explained it's for Vlad. And you'll find his PayPal information. Feel free to donate by PayPal. It's obviously it's not a tax deduction for you, but it's a gift, so there's no problem with him or you with that regards. But he's using it now to help other families in the area, other refugees who need money because they've got to pay the bills to feed themselves and to get their homes. And as a last resort, you can use my Cash App or Venmo, and I've been sending that money. So as soon as I get it in, a couple $100, I cash it out and send it immediately via PayPal to Vlad. So there's a paper trail of everything, so it's legit. And a number of people have done that, but most of the money has come directly to Vlad from PayPal. So anyway, that was the long update on Vlad, but I wanted you guys to know it just amazingly well, and it's exactly as I knew. He's been finding lots of other families who can use the help, which is wonderful. All right, I'm going to have a sip of water, and then we can start doing Q&A. As you can tell, probably my nose is still – I had this little nose surgery to open the airways on Friday, and I'm better. Every day I'm getting a little better. It still knocked me out fatigue-wise and is definitely making my nose clogged, and my nose is still clogged today, and it's driving me crazy. But at least the fatigue I'm feeling – I'm still fatigued, but it's much – I only took a 1-hour nap today. That was very good of me. So water and go back to the comments. All right, guys. Now let me just see here. Thank you for that. Let me see real quick. Elmo SM1. Any good stories about people using all those Molotov cocktails people were making at the start of the war? That's a great, and thank you for the compliment, by the way. That's a really good question because I was wondering about that too. Let me read this again. Any good stories about people using all those Molotov cocktails people were making at the start of the war? Remember, Molotov cocktails are basically, I mean, I was not an expert on this until, I mean, I knew what they were generally, but I then Googled it. You know, I'm terrified of what my Google history looks like nowadays. But I Googled how to make one. And, you know, it's a gasoline bomb in a Coke bottle. I'll leave it at that because I don't even want to be giving recipes online. But it's, you know, you throw the bottle, you light it on fire, you throw it, the bottle breaks open and the gas, it's used for setting tanks on fire in vehicles like that. Before the war, or as the war was starting, Elmo is correct, if it's Elmo, is correct that we were seeing videos from Ukraine of, I mean, I saw one street corner video. I counted the number of Molotov cocktails they had made on this one street corner. And we're talking a street corner in one town. They had between 7,500 and 10,000 Molotov cocktails already made. It was amazing. I mean, and I'm thinking one town and one corner. The thing is, what the military experts are saying is typically the Molotov cocktails would be used when the troops are going street by street trying to take a town. Now, that may be happening in Mariupol, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But in Kyiv, as in other cities, they're still just they're just trying to blow these cities up. They're trying to kill as many civilians as possible, hit as many apartment buildings as possible, and just kill as many people, break the will of the people, get the people to flee. So there's fewer people to fight them when they finally invade and go block and block to sort of clean out the city. So typically when they would go block to block is when the Molotov cocktails would come out. Odessa, for example, if you've seen, and they still haven't quite invaded Odessa yet. They're still holding off, it seems. There have been some bombing outside of it, I think nearby, but it is not sort of full-fledged yet. In Odessa, they were showing some of the street scenes where the reporters could still walk around because there's no bombing yet. And you saw the streets filled with those hedgehogs, they call them. And the hedgehogs are basically railroad tracks that they cut and they weld them together like this, and then one more in the middle. So they stand right with three of them, and it blocks tanks. And what they do is they put these if this is the road. Here, I'll show you. We'll put there. I'm writing up the hedgehogs to show you guys how this works. So if this were, a big city, the hedgehogs are the X's. What happens here? I mean, actually, because I'm doing it backwards with you, I'm going to write it out because that way I can follow with my finger better. Instead of coming down the street, they've got these things blocking the tanks and the trucks. So now the tank has to go here and then turn slowly and go over here and then turn slowly and go over here. And what is it doing? It's slowing down the tanks and the trucks. It's making them go one by one. They can't get two or three in a row to zoom by. And what happens is as they're going slow, or even better, you put hedgehogs all the way across. So now the tank has to stop. Someone's got to get out. They've got to move it. Well, when that tank stops or slows down, somebody from a window above drops a Molotov cocktail on that tank. That's what they're for. From the urban experts, John Spencer is somebody to Google on Twitter or even online in general if you're interested. He's an urban warfare expert, an expert on fighting wars in cities who has been putting out all of this wonderful information. He's basically putting out a how-to guide for the Ukrainians. And thank you, by the way, for the gifts. I know I haven't been thanking you for the gifts on TikTok, but I do appreciate them. Thank you. So very interesting. But you're right, Elmo. I've been very surprised as to why we haven't really heard news of it. And I'm wondering if it's because we're not getting the street-to-street battles yet. Although in Mariupol, I would think we would be at this point. But who knows? But again, good question. Let me just scroll down. Lori. Hello, Lori. I remember you. I like that I'm starting to remember people's names. And then I promise I'm going to jump to a TikTok question next. Do you think Putin knows all the details about how this military operation is going? I saw an interview and they said they would rather remove him than tell him the truth that he is failing. Well, okay. There's a couple different levels to whether Putin knows what's going on. First of all, we talked about this communications problem going on with the Russian front. And the reason so many generals may be dying is because the generals they've lost their means of communication. They've got to actually go to the war front in Ukraine to see what's going on. And by going there, they're putting their lives at risk and getting killed. Well, what that also means is if you can't communicate to the general, if the front in the war can't communicate to the general who maybe is further back in Ukraine or right in Russia, how is the front going to communicate to Moscow to tell Putin what's going on? So their communications has been kind of a disaster. So you wonder if Putin is getting the whole story. The second big problem there, and this was fascinating, I saw them talking about this a lot yesterday on CNN, that the US was saying it's not clear that any one military person is in charge of the war. And what they were saying was, it looks like Russia has a number of different generals, like one in charge of, the forces coming in from Belarus, one in charge of the forces Kharkiv, one in charge of the forces coming from the southeast, and one in charge of the forces from Crimea, and maybe even one in charge of the Navy forces, the ones that are bombing Mariupol now. There isn't, from our intelligence assessment, there isn't any one general who's in charge of the whole war, which is crazy because somebody has to actually coordinate the troops and coordinate the attacks, right? So that would also make it hard because now you've got 5 different generals in 5 different areas that are trying to get information from their subordinates and get it back to Moscow. It sounds like a cluster F, as we say in English. The other issue which Lori raises, and then I'll move on, is, people are terrified of telling Putin the truth anyway. That's probably a good reason of how he got into this war to start with. Not got into it, but why he's losing, because the military wasn't going to tell him they weren't prepared. The military wasn't going to tell him the plans were bad, that he wasn't sending enough men, that their logistics sucked. So they went in anyway, and they got destroyed. And we saw what Putin did to his intelligence chief a couple of weeks ago. If you saw, there was this sort of famous meeting of Putin with his cabinet right before he invaded. And he got the intelligence chief there, and he just berated this. I'm talking like the worst boss. I said he reminded me of my boss at the United Nations. Just mean, badgering, bullying, speak up. I can't hear you. Lift your head. He treated this man the way you shouldn't treat a little boy even. So if you're treated like that by Putin, you don't want to be the guy to say, hey, Vlad, everybody's dead. Because Vlad's going to say, why aren't you dead? So I'd be, having said that, he's not a moron. I mean, I bet you Putin's watching CNN. To that degree, Putin knows what's going on, though. He knows he's getting his butt kicked, and that's why they're trying to get Belarus involved, I think. Oops, I'm scrolling down here. Oh, is the pronunciation? Belarus. Yep, Russian pronunciation. Oh, it's the Russian thing. I see, because I'd studied Russian. Belarus. Oh, so that's why. So it was the Bia and that's what it was then. I studied it when I learned Russian. Okay, thank you. I will be more like Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians would say Belarus. Okay, I will say it like the Ukrainians then. Like everything else we learned. We learned everything by the Russian pronunciations here. It's funny because I asked a friend of mine who has spoken Russian, who lives in Russia now and everything, and she didn't know what I was talking about, an American friend, but I suspect it might be for that reason, because it was phrasing from way back then. Okay, that makes sense then. Thank you, CB. Audrey, any word if anyone has taken the Ukrainians up on the offer of cash for jets or helicopters? No, and I was thinking of that with the guy with the tank. What the Ukrainians did, I did a wonderful TikTok video on this. The Ukrainians did this video that was really cool, actually. I mean, it was very well done. And it looked like a, join the Marines, join the Navy kind of video. And it showed, a MiG fighter plane flying by a sunset, an attack helicopter over a field, this kind of stuff. And I mean, my Russian is, what I say, немного по-русски, only a little bit of Russian, and my Ukrainian's even worse because the words are different than Russian, which confused me, a lot of the words. But you see the plane and it says 1 million and you hear dollar, SHA, US, guarantee. And then they showed a helicopter, $500,000 SHA, US, guarantee. And they were basically, and then the phone number you can call, and they were putting out this ad for the Russian troops that if you bring them a MiG fighter jet, they're giving you $1 million US. And if you bring them an attack helicopter, you get $500,000 US. We've heard nothing about it. Today's report on them getting the the tank, and I'm surprised, frankly, the tank wasn't worth more, but on the tank was the first I'd heard of them getting something through their little eBay, Ukrainian eBay. So I don't know. And again, I don't know if you're a Cecil or a Cecil, depending. In America, we'd often say Cecil. In England, I believe, or in the UK, you would say Cecil, I believe. So excuse me if I'm getting it wrong. A little bit of water. Oh, and because folks asked yesterday, I wasn't clear about it. Typically, I try to go about an hour for the whole thing, and then we hang out afterwards. We've been going a little longer. I don't mind going a little longer, but it gets exhausting after an hour because I've kind of have to be on the whole time. So usually, let's see how this goes, but usually after an hour, I prefer just to hang a little bit and chat friendly stuff because it's less taxing. I don't mind talking about my dog, but it gets very tired. It's like doing a class for an hour, actually. But so Cecil asks, how many of the top Russian officials are being considered war criminals due to the actions in Ukraine? And thank you for the thank you. Here's my response. Are any Russian officials going to be considered war criminals due to their actions? The International Court has appointed a prosecutor who I believe is in Ukraine already. That prosecutor, he is investigating war crimes by all parties, which is fair as a prosecutor. He said, I'm investigating everybody. Anybody who commits a war crime, I'm gonna look for the evidence. That's good. But the concern is, and I raised this yesterday in our talk, I asked a friend of mine, I said, everyone who follows Russia says what they're doing in Ukraine is not surprising. It's the same thing they did in Syria. They did the same war crimes in Syria. Remember the chemical weapons? I mean, I remember that. That was a huge story. Even here in the States where we don't pay as much attention sometimes to foreign policy, I've got chills now talking to you because I remember pictures of the children they brought in and having to throw water on them and the fathers carrying it was just, we saw, and I thank our news for showing the images. They did not hide the images from us. Those were war crimes. How the heck did Putin get away with that? How did the Russian officials get away with it? And the friend I asked said, because he's got nukes. They're afraid to go after him. And my concern is the same thing's going to happen here. Yes. First, the prosecutor has to find the evidence and believe he has a case, right? Or put a case together. Then you've got to get personal jurisdiction over the guy or gal that you're charging with war crimes. You've literally got to physically get them. That could happen if there's a coup in Russia and whoever follows Putin hands Putin over. That would be great. But otherwise, it's very difficult to get them unless they leave the country and you arrest them. So, I would like us to put together a big list of war crimes of people who can never step foot out of Russia, because if they do, they're going to get arrested, because I think it's pretty atrocious. Just think about it. The fact that Putin did this before, and that's why we're not surprised. Why the hell did he get away with it before? Why did we normalize relations with this guy? Why did we normalize trade relations? At some point, we meaning the rest of the world, have been amazing in terms of the economic sanctions, but it still really bothers me. And I am somebody who has studied a lot about foreign policy and politics overall. I do a lot of domestic politics here in Washington too. So I'm not naive, right? I understand that you can't do everything. You can't hold everyone responsible. You can't get involved in every international conflict. Sometimes bad people will get away with bad things. I get that. But after Syria, come on. Come on. And this after Ukraine, even more, not even more so, equal to Syria. Come on. It's the same guy. So, in the end, I think it's going to be political pressure from people like us when this is over, however it ends, telling our governments there is no way that you are going to treat this man and treat this government like it's business as usual, Renault, and we all open up our little factories and make all our blood money like we did before. And fund Russia so they can just build up again and next time attack Poland or the Baltics. Oh, that's hilarious. Susan says, Russia denied that their cosmonauts who were going to the International Space Station wore yellow and blue suits in support of Ukraine. So this was great. I did a video of this too on TikTok. So initially Russia was making noise like they were going to leave our astronaut on the International Space Station and not bring him home because it's a Russian spacecraft we use to go back and forth. NASA doesn't do that anymore, I guess. And the Russians finally said, we're bringing him back. Don't worry, him or her. We're not going to leave them there. But what they did do is the Russian cosmonauts, the Russian astronauts, they call them cosmonauts, get off the rocket, and they're climbing into the space station, and you see the video. And what you see is the cosmonauts are wearing yellow spacesuits. Normally, what did I see the normal color was? I don't remember if it was blue or what, but I know the normal color is not yellow. And there's like a Russian flag on their chest and a Russian flag right here, like you see with the military too. It identifies their country. But then they've got like this blue circle on their chest and a blue stripe on each leg. There's these accents of blue. Well, blue and yellow is the Ukrainian flag. The cosmonaut gets asked about this, and he says, oh, well, it was our turn to pick the colors. We could pick our own colors, and we had so much yellow fabric that we thought it was time to use it. Right? Well, of course, they've got to deny it because Russia's not going to admit they did this in solidarity with Ukraine. There is no way that these guys went up there and happened to wear yellow outfits for the first time or practically first time and happened to have these strange blue circles and lines all over their yellow outfit and not intending it to be the Ukrainian flag. They did, which was pretty cool. And again, because we're talking about Russia, really dangerous. I mean, that is not good for their careers, obviously, but pretty, you do what you can. Olga, let me see if I have answered. Olga asks, sorry if it's been answered. What happens when a Russian general dies? Does someone else rank up? Yeah, I would think so. I mean, well, I assume it's kind of like the U.S. military. You don't have to have somebody rank up. Somebody can just take his place. So in other words, they appoint another general. Maybe my guess is if you're in the field, the second, again, American military, the second, if you're like literally fighting on the field, your top guy dies, the number two takes over. That's just the way it is. I mean, even in sci-fi shows, it works that way, but in the military, right? If you're in a field, you take over. In terms of whether you're a general or not, it probably depends who's around. Hopefully, I hope they don't, but hopefully for them, they've got communications with Moscow where Moscow would simply tell them in the end, yeah, General so-and-so is taking over the lead for General, who just got boomed. But yeah, it would just be something like that. But they, in any military, it would not be, let me rephrase this. In any military, it is expected in wartime that people are going to die. So the whole chain of command issue and who replaces who is going to be, baked into stone, and they're all going to know that. Now, whether the Russian military functions well enough that they do it well is a whole other question. But they would already have a pecking order and all of that. Yeah. Oops. There we go, Daniel. Daniel, you're back. Daniel, who always asks the interesting but sometimes hard questions. 1 second. Cleaning my glasses for Daniel here. Seems like Poland, UK, and Japan are three countries that have really stood up to Russia. Yep. On the other hand, Israel, India, and Turkey, seem to be acting somewhat in their own self-interest. Am I getting the wrong impression? No. India, we were complaining about India just yesterday. The U.S. was. So I know India has been an ongoing problem. And India, probably worried about strategic issues in the area and just economic with Russia. Turkey's been in a weird position because Turkey is a NATO member. So Turkey obviously is, on board with NATO, but Turkey is one of the only countries that's still allowing flights from Russia. If you go and you look at the flight trackers, you're going to see these flights going back and forth to Istanbul. I don't know if anywhere else, but it was Istanbul that I kept tracking the flights from Russia. So that's been a little weird. At the same time, the Ukrainians are using Turkish drones. These are the drones that actually are armed drones. They're using armed drones to attack the Russian vehicles. Turkey also had served as the venue for some of the peace talks that went nowhere. So Turkey, I think, is trying to sort of play it both ways. Now, if you look at the map, Turkey is yet another NATO country that is right there with Russia. You get along the Black Sea there. So I get why they're being careful, but having said that, I don't get why they're being careful because Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, I kept saying Slovenia the other night, I'm sorry, Slovakia and Poland are also, well, okay, they're not all bordering Russia, but they're bordering Ukraine, which now is the violence. You've got the Baltic states that are bordering Russia. I mean, it's a little annoying, but at least Turkey hasn't been as bad. Israel finally came around either yesterday or it was the night before, but Israel came around and said it was embracing the international sanctions. And the actual statement they put out is they didn't want to be used as an end run around the sanctions, that basically the Russians would go through Israel to do it. So that's good. But I don't know. I know that yesterday, I want to say, Zelensky was speaking to the Israeli Knesset by Zoom. Was it today? I think it was yesterday. And he's been tailoring his message to everybody. And obviously for them, he was talking about, the Holocaust and everything else. But Israel's been ticking me off. I mean, that's a very polemical issue around the world. I will say this, it's been ticking me off as someone who has traditionally been a supporter of Israel. I tend to be very divided on the whole Israeli-Palestinian issue, not getting into it during this show because it's one way guaranteed we can all have a fight, but I think both sides have a valid point. And that'll just make sure everyone gets mad at me. So I do not. So I have been a defender of Israel, and it makes me very annoyed that Israel is not being a bigger defender of Ukraine, because you know what? Lots of countries are afraid of Russia. Lots of countries have security ramifications. And I got to tell you, if there's any country on the planet who is probably most likely to be defended by the United States if Russia attacks them, it's Israel. So, give me a break. That I think is a cop-out from Israel. That has been annoying me. Tyson Ann. You know what? Let me do a quick look on here. Sorry, I meant to get these. Got so many questions from you guys. Actually, I want to say this was Lime Green Garnet says, is there any way to save Mariupol? It's bad. It's bad. I mean, I don't know whether it's going to fall, but the news from Mariupol is bad. From what I was hearing today, it looked like the Russians were winning. We're pushing back the Ukrainian troops. I mean, they need help. I know, having said this, in other parts of the country, the Ukrainians are taking the lead. There were like 3 cities in the north that at least the reports were today, but the experts were saying they were credible reports. 3 cities north of Kyiv, the capital, right, of Ukraine, that the Russians were pretty much surrounded. Thank you. The Russians were pretty much surrounded and were in trouble. And apparently they hadn't faced this kind of a dilemma since like World War II. They were saying like it was a disaster for the Russian troops. So Russia's advancing in some places and it's losing in others, which is the good news. But I just, we've got to get them a lot. We've got to, whatever we're doing, we've got to do 10 times more as far as I'm concerned. But we have been doing a lot, so I'm not going to knock our governments for that. Tyson Ann asks, with the threats of Russian hackers, cyber attacks, which have come up in the last day, should we be worried about our personal bank accounts, finances? Sure. You should be worried about that anyway. Let's face it, guys. Hackers are nothing new. The Russians aren't the first people to be hacking. People hack bank accounts. They hack Google accounts. They hack your phone. They hack everything. You should go online. I would say go online and Google some articles about best practices for your passwords and stuff. For example, I use a password manager now that itself is a crazy password to get into, and it protects my other crazy passwords so I don't have to remember them. So I can just I have like gobbledygook passwords because they're secure somewhere else. So I don't have to write a password that's, my dog's name and my birthday that somebody could probably figure out. There is no password of mine that will be that, by the way. So it's the kind of thing you should be looking at anyway. You should be looking at all of your passwords. You should be making sure that your passwords are, none of your passwords should be cute phrases. I was younger then or whatever. You can certainly use words and letters and things mixed. Because I saw, like, for example, my Comcast, my Xfinity password for my internet, they've changed them finally to being like words and letters. Thank you. So that it's a little like, 1, 2, 3, 4, cyber, 5, 6, 7, worried. I still think that's a little too easy, but Google articles on this, you should be worried. And what I would be more worried about would be a virus getting around and then putting out a computer virus that's just flying everywhere. So your computer should have software protecting it. Even my Mac, I use a Mac, but even on my Mac, I have antivirus software. I finally caved a year ago and said, you know what? Even for Macs that are better at this, I'm getting software. The other thing is, just make sure you've updated all your stuff. Your computer should be up to date with the latest, upgrade. Your phone should be up to date. Your iPad, whatever kind of a pad you use, anything that has an update should be updated. I think that's just one very safe thing to be doing. KC, can you speak of Russia versus Japan? Oh, God, probably not. In the World War II treaty talks? No. I knew you were going to say the Kuril Islands. I'm just not up. God, I studied that in graduate school. There are some disputed islands called the Kuril Islands in northern Japan, or I guess, depending who you talk to, northern Japan or Russia, that the Russians from what I recall, took after World War II. Japan still claims they're theirs. Japan brought it up a week ago just to, I think, cause a little mayhem, sort of restated publicly that the islands were Japanese, which was very interesting. And the Russians then came out, and I don't know if they sort of threatened to nuke Japan, but as always, did one of those threats that Russia has been doing of late, over the top against Japan. But that's sort of all I know about what's been going on. I will say it struck me that Japan was kind of playing games a little bit, because Japan was saying, great, you're at war in Ukraine. You're kind of losing. Let's start to scare you on other fronts as well. If anything, it's even possible that the U.S. asked Japan to do it. The U.S. said, you know what, just keep them worried. Because, for example, look, I had said this at the beginning of the war. At the beginning of the war, we were told like 80% of Russia's active military or whatever had moved over to Ukraine, and they moved a bunch of troops from the Russian Far East, right? Siberia, Kamchatka, near Petropavlovsk, Vladivostok, all the stuff on the Pacific. Well, that's 11 time zones away. That's how big Russia is. 11 time zones. And I said, why don't we make them keep some of their troops out east by just, let's have some maneuvers. Let's move 5,000 of our troops to Alaska, 5,000 more. I mean, we've already got troops in Alaska, 5,000 more, right? Or Japan in this case. What's Japan doing? Japan making noise about the Kuril Islands. So now the Russians are going, oh God, do we have to keep some more troops in the east because of the Japanese playing games? So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody, whether it was Japanese intelligence, our intelligence, or somebody else, got the smart idea to kind of mess around with the Japanese, with the Russians. So that I can tell you that, at least as far as what I think is going on now. Scroll. Hang on. Scroll. I'm just looking sure the super stickers. No questions, just a thank you. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. Okay, I think I caught up on these questions. Let me look at you guys here. Assault asks, what about Russia saying we should give back Alaska? Again, that's the cute psychological warfare stuff. They're doing it to perhaps rattle some Americans, and they're also doing it to buck up their own people. Like, so-and-so said we should get Alaska back. Yeah. Imagine like our guys doing it like F yeah, let's do it. It's like, I think they're just doing it. They're doing it as propaganda. I mean, clearly Russia's not getting Alaska back. And if they tried, it would be very bad if they tried. So hopefully, I didn't see that. Hillary tested positive for COVID. I have a friend who tested positive 2 weeks ago too. He, works at home, federal government, hadn't been out anywhere, very safe, vaccinated, boosted, masks all the time. But he caught it 2 weeks ago because he had some workers over repairing his furnace, and he caught it from the workers. And fortunately, he only had like a scratchy throat, but hopefully she's okay. I mean, Obama was pretty good with all of this too. Good. I'm caught up in my super chats. Then let me look at a few more questions on TikTok with you guys here. Use guys, as we say in Chicago. Yeah, exactly. Let's get Mexico. Yeah, let's take back, or actually, I was going to say Mexico saying, let's take back part of America. It's goofy stuff. Let me see. Yeah, the wheat thing is interesting. BDGRS71 said, can you talk about wheat? There's been concern in the last couple of days. Ukraine was the bread, I believe. They called it the bread basket of the Soviet. Oh, Psaki did too. Jen Psaki. I didn't see that. Oh, I saw somebody said Psaki did too, but I didn't know what you were referring to. Wow. Well, that's bad. Then maybe it is going to pass around the White House. That's bad. Let's talk about wheat really quick because it does matter. Ukraine was the bread basket of the Soviet Union, from what I recall. Meaning, great farmlands, great wheat production. Ukraine is still, I say Ukraine, that's how I was taught. People say Ukraine, but I Googled that too and was told you can say Ukraine, so I'm okay. But Ukraine is a huge wheat producer. Because of the war, they're not planting their wheat. And there's real concern about Ukraine itself in terms of food, but also the world market. I forget the percent. I want to say I saw 10% or something, but whatever percentage Ukraine provides in the world market is enough that they said wheat prices are going to soar. And I mean, wheat is, staple for bread. I'm assuming, I don't know whether wheat is used for animal feed or whatever, but it's used in enough things that it's a big deal. Now, actually, this is just an interesting little thing I saw somebody post. I'll bring up Susan. Live in Anchorage, and the Air Force in Ellendorf is very active these last few weeks. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, I used to work for Ted Stevens years ago. Had spent a lot of time going back and forth to Alaska, and I mean, when you get to the Aleutian Islands, when you get Alaska, right? Alaska, and then you've got this like long string of islands going towards Russia. The final end of the Aleutian Islands. I forgot the name. I should know this. Remember, Little Diomede and Big Diomede, I guess. But it's like 2.5 miles between. I want to say it's only 2.5 miles when you get to the little islands at the end, from Russia. So it's very close. But Russia should know better. Elmendorf is the Air Force Base in Alaska. Sorry. Another quick little look here. Let me see what else we got here. Question was exactly somebody. If Russia gets Alaska back, then Britain gets America back. Fair deal. Hey, we like the Brits. We love the Brits. All right. Can you check the question? Okay, you know what? Let me find the questions tab. I've got the new messages tab. Let me see. I am trying to see. Is it under interact? I'm sorry, on the TikTok folks are telling me to check the questions tab, but let me look if it's under interact. Q&A. Guys, I didn't even know those crazy questions were there. Okay, that's a good question. Julie asks, are we in violation of the Budapest Memorandum? Thank you. Thank you and I apologize. I didn't know that was a feature here. And then Richard, we'll go to you next. I see. Actually, let me put Richard's point up because he's responding to the wheat thing, and then we do Julie's questions. Ukraine grows soft spring wheat for pasta. They don't grow hard red winter wheat that's used for breads. Okay, but why were they talking? They were talking about wheat prices going up like horrifically around the world as a result of this. And I don't think they were just talking about pasta. There was something else going on, unless the pasta affects everything else. But they were saying wheat prices in general. It was a CNN broadcast they did yesterday about it. So anyway, if you know more about it, weigh in. The Budapest Memorandum. So this is important, and you will hear about this, the Budapest Memorandum, when you are listening to people talk about what happened with Ukraine and giving up its nuclear weapons. So Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, right? The Soviet Union falls apart in 1991. Ukraine becomes an independent country, and Ukrainians inherit 5,000 or 6,000 nuclear weapons from the Soviet Union because they happen to be in Ukraine. Ukraine's got them. Ukraine owns them. Well, Russia wasn't too happy about that, but America wasn't too happy either. The great powers didn't want more countries having more nuclear weapons for a variety of reasons, including selfishness, but also, the notion that maybe it's better to have fewer than more nukes. In any case, they get Ukraine to agree, and they signed a series of documents, but one of them was called the Budapest Memorandum, that Ukraine agrees to get rid of its nukes in exchange for a security guarantee from Russia, the UK, United Kingdom, and America. Now, we didn't guarantee their security because they gave up the nukes, and the Russians came in 2014 and took Crimea. And then the Russians came in this time, and we're giving them weapons, but it's not like we guaranteed their security, right? We're not exactly going to war. We're not exactly doing a no-fly zone. We didn't put peacekeepers in. Some of the people involved with the initial memorandum, I saw somebody on CNN, one of the guys who was involved, say, well, we specifically wrote it in a way that we made clear we wouldn't go to war for them. And I cry BS on that, because if I'm Ukraine and I've got nuclear weapons and you're telling me I'm going to give up my nuclear weapons for a guarantee from you that isn't really a guarantee, then I'm going to say, go to hell, I'm not giving up my nuclear weapons. And this is sort of the history of Jonathan Swan, who's an Australian journalist with Axios here in DC, did a wonderful summary today or yesterday. I think it was today about this, just talking about how we have screwed Ukraine again and again and again, and how Ukraine wanted to join NATO in 2008. We told them no, right? We had the security guarantees. We then didn't protect their security when Russia came in and took Crimea. We told Ukraine they had to have like a world-class democracy and a world-class military. They had to up their military strength, or they couldn't be a member of NATO. Then we let in some of the former Yugoslavia republics that didn't have great democracies and really didn't have militaries at all, but we let them into NATO. And that basically every step of the way we've screwed Ukraine. And this memorandum is just another example. Yeah, not happy about that memorandum. And I wouldn't blame the Ukrainians. I am not a wheat expert, but I'm glad you guys are discussing it in there. Okay, well, this is interesting. Eames Bear asked, what is your stance on Elon Musk buying the MiGs? I didn't hear that was a thing. Is that a thing? That Elon Musk was talking about buying the MiGs? That would be pretty hilarious. Elon buying them and then passing them along to Ukraine? I didn't hear that. Or was this somebody's idea, like on Reddit or something? Let's get a petition for Elon to buy the MiGs. But actually, there is an interesting story with regards to the MiGs, though. I don't have it here. I did a TikTok video on this today, this afternoon, I think. The Ukrainians got their hands on some equipment. And I forget what it's called. It's like a Kasher 4 or something. But basically, it's anti-AWACS, anti-AUVs, the drones that fly in the sky, anti-satellite. It interferes with communications. And it interferes with our own radar communication that we would be using to guide the UAVs to our own, the AWACS. AWACS, remember, is like the really cool thing, the drone thing almost on the top of a 747 that they use for the radar. Well, it interferes with all of that. Well, the Ukrainians got their hands on a Russian one. It's like the size of a truck. It is something that U.S. intelligence has wanted for years. We don't have it. The Ukrainians now do. And the defense experts I was reading, they showed a picture of it online. The defense experts I was reading today were saying that the Western intelligence, especially Defense Department, CIA, all of these guys, would so want that piece of equipment that Ukraine could actually get its MiGs as a result. Its MiGs and surface-to-air missiles as well. Because this is a piece of technology the West, the U.S. in particular, wants so badly. So interesting to see what happens there. And again, thank you for telling me about these questions. I had no idea they were there. I apologize. Now I know. But I'm going to do while I'm waiting here, while you guys are discussing fertilizer and wheat in the YouTube, I'll do a few more here. And then, you know what? I'll go a few more minutes, guys. It's 8:15. Let's go a few more minutes and then we'll stop. Like I said, I don't want to get burned out. But, and actually the other folks, I felt like my crypto guys don't go this long. My crypto guys do like half hour or an hour, but I do enjoy talking to you guys and you've been really supportive too. So and this is an important issue. It's not like we're going to have these things happen every day. Interesting. I didn't see that. Well, that's a pretty big question. Miss Ivy Biscuits, should us as a younger generation be worried for the future? You know, let me say this. That I think to some degree, look, you know, a lot of bad things happening in the world, but also to some degree, I think young people are being psyched out in the same way Vladimir Putin is trying to psych us out. They're trying to convince you guys that no one has ever faced what you're facing. And frankly, it's making you depressed. Oh, my crypto guys that I like are Blockchain Boy. Crypto Weatherman doesn't go. He goes live. Crypto Weatherman goes live. And Wendy O, who's fabulous too. Wendy goes live multiple times a week. But I'm pretty sure Crypto Weatherman, Blockchain Boy, I think often does half hour to an hour. Wendy does her hour-long stuff. But Wendy's pretty meticulous, though. I think she's pretty meticulous. I've got to learn to have the rigor Wendy has. But I was saying, I think some people have found it in their interest to scare young people. And for young people around the world to think that your generation is facing something nobody else has faced. And I think that's bull. And what I mean is you're facing real problems, whether it's cost of buying a house, whether it's cost of, and we're talking America here, of course, cost of education, where, you know, ridiculous. I looked at my graduate school I went to at Georgetown, and it's $60,000 a year just for tuition. When I was going there 30 years ago, it was $15,000 a year. I mean, ridiculous, the prices of school in America. And it's horrible. What I think, not that this should give you a lot of solace, but it wasn't much better when I was your age. When I was your age, I had $60,000 in student loans, and that was back in 1989. Right, 33 years ago, I had $60,000 in loans. My loan payment was equal to my rent. And I lived in Washington, D.C. at the time, which even back then was like the third most expensive. It still is the third most expensive city in America. So my rent was very high as American rent goes, probably twice the normal in Chicago and other cities. And it was equal to my student loan payment. Just to give you today in Washington, that would be like $2,000 a month rent payment or $2,000 a month student loan payment. It was huge. I couldn't afford to buy a place. I didn't buy a place until I was in my 40s because I couldn't afford it. I mean, and DC was too expensive, and I wasn't making enough money working for the government. I mean, the wars we went through, I got to see wars. Personally, I didn't get to see wars, but I mean, we had Yugoslavia, we had Iraq twice, with Yugoslavia and Bosnia, the Reagan years, wherever you stood on that, the Reagan years, there was a lot of concern about Russia and nuclear war, whether it's because you blamed Reagan or whether it's because you thought the Russians were crazy. But either way, nuclear war was on the agenda in the 80s, that's for sure. The 60s, you had the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was born after that. I was still too young to even know it. The President Kennedy was assassinated. We haven't had anything like that since then. I mean, we've had the Vietnam War was 10 years of living hell for this country. I'm just saying, and the economic crises, we haven't just, we had the meltdown now, we had the meltdown 10 years, the meltdown now is because of COVID, but the meltdown 10 years ago, but we also had hyperinflation in the 70s. I don't want to go through all of it now, but I think, some people, I think, in trying to get help for young people, I think that's fine. Education stuff and everything else, loans, student loans forgiven, whatever. I think they're concocting a story that you guys are uniquely, injured. And the other thing they kind of don't realize too is the rest of us are injured too. Like high housing prices affects me too. High education prices affects your parents who are paying for education if your parents are paying. Any case, so maybe because I'm a little older, I don't look at this as, oh my God, the worst thing ever. It's never been like this. We had the same worries in the 80s. I went to the Soviet Union in the 80s, and I had a Russian guy come up to me in a bus when I was in the Soviet Union, 1984, February. Not a pleasant time in U.S.-Russian relations. And the Russians would not talk. They could tell we were American. They could tell we were Westerners. I mean, just look at, we do not dress like Russians. Some guy comes up to, the bus is packed full of people. And you're literally person to person in this Moscow bus. And this Russian guy comes up behind me, tall, blonde, the big cool Russian hat. This guy must have been 6'4". And he turns to my ear, literally, because also they would talk to you, but they were afraid of people seeing them talk to you because they could get in trouble with the police. So he comes up to my ear, and I hear this guy whisper in my ear, "Does Mr. Reagan want nuclear war?" And I was like, holy shit. And I turned and I said, I was being very diplomatic, but I said, I think both sides don't want it. But I mean, these were real concerns back then too. Anyway, that's a very long way of answering the question. I didn't mean to go on so long, but I guess I'm saying, I'm not really freaking out at this. We have wars. We have bad wars. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was almost nuclear war. Read up on that in the early 1960s. I want to say 1961, I think. What was it, October? The name of the book? Was it 13 Days in October or something? It was a great book written about it. But in any case, that's just my take. Europe was living in the same bubble. Now, I will say, interestingly enough, though, my friend Patricia was on the other night, and she lived in Italy a long time. She said her Italian friends are getting very scared and are actually thinking of leaving Italy temporarily to go somewhere safer because they think they're a little too close to the action. So I don't know. I'd be curious, actually, I'll put the questions down a sec so I can see the comments. I'd be curious, any of the Europeans, whether, are you seeing that amongst your friends and stuff? Guys, we're at 8:20. I'm going to call it quits on the substantive questions. We've been going an hour and 20 for that. Let's just stay 10 minutes of happy talk, of talking about other stuff. I mean, feel free to discuss these things in the comments if you like. Tomorrow, this has been working out pretty well. I like to try, although I will say, maybe we'll keep doing this time, 7 o'clock tomorrow, because if it's an hour earlier, the light comes in the window and it blocks us. It's a pain. So let's do 7 p.m. Eastern time. This exact same time tomorrow. I'll hang and talk to you guys for a few minutes anyway, but we can, hold on, I'm going to look here and see real quick hopefully I didn't, there we go. Okay, I did not turn it off. Good. I think the lighting worked. I'm surprised. I bought a new arm for my phone because my old one was falling apart. So my investment in you all, but a new arm for my phone. So my phone is sitting up here on one of those big, cool arms. And this way I can at least sort of see your questions and see the TikTok, the YouTube at the same time. And it's not bad. It works well enough. So yay. Anyway, my day's okay. Busy. Just, there was a lot of Ukraine update stuff. And then it was a gorgeous day in DC. It got up to 70 today, which I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's gorgeous. It's maybe, what would it be, 20 maybe in Celsius-ish, but very nice. So took the dog for a long walk, went and bought some lunch, brought it home. So it was nice. And then just hung out here. And actually, because it's sunny out too, on my balcony, I've got a nice little a wonderful couch that some neighbors gave me. It's a Crate and Barrel couch, which is like this really expensive American company. And they didn't want it. And I was like, okay. So they gave it to me. And it's wonderful. Yeah. Oh, the trees. Yep. The cherry blossoms are already flowering around town. I don't know if the major ones downtown. Washington, D.C. is famous for having cherry blossom trees that go back. They go back a couple different times. I think they go back initially to the early 1900s. And that strain, cherry blossoms, correct. That strain might have died at some point. And then the Japanese, after World War II, I think, gave us a new gift of more cherry blossoms. Well, all across Washington in general, like I have one across the street that's just stunning. It's this Google cherry blossom tree, if you're not familiar with it. Stunning. But in downtown Washington, we've got them all around the monuments. And there's a festival that starts, CMT, thank you for coming by. There's a festival that starts where we get just thousands of tourists, probably 100,000 tourists who come to see, because it's just this beautiful, around all the famous monuments of Washington, of government monuments. And it's just, anyway, just lovely. So very nice. But yeah, so the blossoms have started. So that's been very pretty. Japanese cherries. Yep. I've heard that. Washington and Oregon, I guess, has a nice festival too. I thought I heard. I was out in Oregon a few years ago and had missed the cherry blossoms by like a couple of weeks or something. No, tulips. Did you guys have like a tulip festival I missed, I think, in Oregon? I remember something. I was very upset when I heard about it. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I just missed it by a few weeks. Okay, Tara. How did things... Tara was being very good helping us moderate on TikTok. Did things go okay there, Tara? And did you guys have a few moderators at least? As I said, I've had a lot of you guys did offer to moderate. I finally went through several emails today, contacted you, got several on YouTube, at least from what I've heard. It looks like we've got enough, but I'm still going to have, we got a number of them on TikTok moderators. I'm still going to go through and approve more, because you know what? The more the merrier. This way, you guys, because I don't expect you guys to be here every day. I mean, if you want to come to join in, please do. But I don't want anybody thinking they have to come because they have to moderate, because then it's a job, and I don't want that. So if we can do enough moderators, then we have enough critical mass that it just kind of works out anyway. The moderators just simply look out for crazy people. I mean, when you see people who come into the comments who are simply there, either they're spamming outright, like literally, I can make you $1 million. Come follow. You see the comments on TikTok all the time. Come follow my friend who can make you $1 million, right? You can ban those people. Sometimes you see people who are just clearly pro-Russian, but they're pro-Russian in a way that isn't even vaguely real. They're not like, look, do you mind if I weigh in as somebody who agrees with the Russian side? Can you guys, as a Russian, to me, it seems blah, blah, blah. Can you explain? I think that would be fascinating to have a discussion like that. I have yet to see that on TikTok. I have never seen anybody say, I'm just a nice Russian person interested in talking to somebody from the West. I would welcome that. That would be cool. You don't see that. They're just on TikTok. I would say the TikTok people know exactly what I'm talking about. You know who the trolls are. It's garbage, and it's people just being rude. You can just tell. It's people just sometimes. Actually, I will say the reason I mentioned not liking to get political is you will see that sometimes it's also people trying to make it Biden versus Trump. Like somehow, they want to, and I just don't. That's not why I'm here. We are talking about people's lives over there. We cannot make this an issue that divides us, and that's the thing the Russians would love the most. And I get very suspicious because certain days one day we had a lot of people who jumped in and suddenly wanted to blame Trump. And look, again, I'm not going to, for your purposes now, I've taken a position previously. For your purposes now, I'm not going to take a position. But everybody coming in on one day and everybody from all these different accounts is beating up on Donald Trump in the Ukraine threads, that's suspicious. To me, that's Russian trolls who are there to stir up trouble. So yes, none of that. Well, none of that on TikTok. Yeah, well, I don't want any of that on TikTok, but yeah. So otherwise, actually, as I said, if you want, we still got 1,000 people hanging out on TikTok too. Thanks, guys, and still a couple hundred on YouTube. As I said, I'm happy to talk just a few more minutes. If you're just tuning in, we already finished the discussion. This is just our hangout and pal around about other non-political things for a little bit. As I said, if you want to give more money to Vlad, feel free. it's been fun checking in with him. He's been finding more families. And I mean, he's in a city of 200,000 refugees. So he knows a lot more people he can help. So if you want, you can go to my Beacons link in my profile on TikTok, the link here, and you'll find various links. You can donate to me too. You can donate to the Ukrainian army directly through the National Bank of Ukraine. You can donate social welfare help, like humanitarian relief, directly to the Ukrainian government, to their bank as well. I put those links there, which I kind of like because I donated to the Ukrainian army because I thought it was kind of cool and I wanted to, and it felt a little more direct than giving it to a big aid organization, even though the aid organizations are great. I'm not going to knock them, and frankly, sending the money through my friend Vlad, I like too, because he's been able to help people directly, and I like that. Sasha's doing fine. She's not behind me anymore and not here. My guess is she's probably sleeping she could be on my couch or on my bed. She has like different sleep stations throughout the night. It's very funny. And this is the time of the evening that sometimes she gets tired and she goes into my bedroom or the bathroom. Yes, I have a dog bed in my bathroom as well. She has like 5 beds. I have a 1-bedroom apartment. My dog has 5 beds. What do you do? But no, she's good. She's good. And this is around the time she wakes up, though, because I brush her teeth around this time. And she hates the teeth brushing, but of course she likes the toothpaste because it's peanut butter dog stuff. And I give her a little treat afterwards, which probably negates the brushing, but what do you do? So she usually pops up around this time. I hear the little collar go off, and that's when I pick her up to see you guys. But she's also learned in the last few days that I do this, so she's been hiding. I think I told you guys last night, I tried to give her a treat the other day to get her to come say hi to you. And she literally looked at me from her bed under my desk, and I was like, treat. She wouldn't move. She like looked at me and just went like this. Because she knew I was going to pick her up. So Sasha's fine. Just a little too intelligent for her own good. Anyway, what else we got? Puddingales. Anything else, folks? Just again, non-Ukraine-ish or whatever. Yeah, I'm not gonna, no more Ukraine for tonight. The Vlad total I asked him for total today. He said he was going to tally it up tomorrow. The total as of last night, I think, was at least 12,000, but that wasn't an update on Vlad's, because like I knew Vlad's total, which before was something around 9,000, and I knew the money I sent him, which was around 3 or 4, because people who didn't have PayPal sent me money via Cash App or Venmo, which I normally use just for donations to my work. But in this case, I said, just put a note for Vlad. And frankly, I've just been assuming any money via Cash App and Venmo for the last few days has been for Vlad anyway. So I've just sent it to him, but I've been PayPaling it to him. So I knew that amount was around 12,000 total. But I know he's gotten other PayPal money from, I'm just assuming if I got like an extra 1,500 or maybe 2,000 in the last day and a half, he must have gotten more than that. So it's good. He's going to tell me tomorrow. And then he was going to give us more details on some of the other families, but he's been doing my nephew, who's the very good friend of Vlad, who works with him, was giving me an update. And then I messaged Vlad really quick online. We were messaging today. So yeah, it's been going well. I'm glad, but it makes me happy because, and I think, what's been nice is he's been, I think, trying to focus it more on helping specific families get the housing and things like that, rather than just giving, one family $100 or $200 or whatever. We'll have to get the update from him, but I suspect he's not doing that. He's doing more you're having trouble finding housing. Here's your money for housing for the next couple of weeks. So you can actually put your whole family in there. You can buy some food, etc. People who, frankly, the situation he was in a money crunch situation. His work owes him money. He can't get paid. That was the latest news on that. He can't get paid because there's all sorts of laws in Ukraine about paying Ukrainian freelance employees, and the money is literally, I shouldn't even be telling this. I don't want to go through the details but the company's been very upset, his own company, because the intermediary froze the money basically and isn't getting him the money. So Vlad all of a sudden had no way to pay, and that is not just partially, I think that's what your donations literally paid for. You were paying for the room and food for Vlad's family because the money ran out. Really scary. Again, that's what's scary with this kind of a situation in general. If you think about it, is, imagine the ATMs dry up. Imagine even if the ATM, the money machine, as I call it, lets you take out a couple $100 a day. Imagine what's happening. He said locally, businesses are no longer taking credit cards. Businesses now only want to take cash, or the PayPal. He said his PayPal debit card they are willing to take, because I guess however PayPal, I've never used my debit card with PayPal, but I guess literally, it just transfers it right to your PayPal account or whatever, I'm assuming. I don't know how it works. But however it works, the local businesses in Ukraine have been okay with that. But otherwise, they want cash or nothing, which means, I just think here, imagine having the money in your bank, but how much money do you keep at home, really? And for weeks, it's been 3.5, are we 26, 27 days now into the war? So we're actually almost on 4 weeks into the war. Who has that kind of cash at home? And are you still having to pay your bills? Anyway, very scary stuff. So hopefully we've been able to help him and his friends, which is great. So I've been glad to, like I said, it's fun to do it because I've always enjoyed helping individuals. I think is a little more interesting. Dinner. I didn't do much for dinner. Oh, Sasha Treats. Thank you, Shannon. That's sweet of you. I've been a little boring for dinner lately. What did I do about dinner tonight? Oh God, I made pancakes. I did the lazy parent dinner. I made pancakes. They were good, but sometimes I just make bad food for myself. But it was easy. I was hungry. Still feeling a little bit. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So Tara just said, by the way, too, PayPal is like a direct money transfer. There you go. That's what I was assuming from what Vlad said. Also, it's funny. I don't know that I want a news story on what Vlad is doing personally, because he doesn't need the attention from Russia or whatever that he's helping people. But what's amazing to me is it's only been like maybe now it's been 5 or 6 days. PayPal worked within Ukraine, but you couldn't send money to Ukraine with PayPal. PayPal just opened that up a couple days ago. It was literally like 5 or 6 days ago, I think, that they started letting people send money from abroad. And that's where we got the idea of people helping Vlad, but then of Vlad helping other people, which is really cool. So had the PayPal, I guess, like I said, we could have done my Venmo and Cash App. I just prefer to have it go directly anyway, because there's also just less of a, I want to be transparent about this. And again, I'll even tally up the exact amount you guys sent me and that I sent him, just so you know, but it was probably 3,000 at this point. I'm not even sure because I'd have to tally it up. But I kind of like you sending the money directly to Vlad, because then there's not even a question about it. You sent the money to him and he's got it and he deals with it. But PayPal made it possible, which is very cool. Amazing when you think about it. Like I said, that thing just got changed in the last week. And without it, and I'm hoping maybe other people are raising money doing the same thing. At the very least, the good thing is other people in Ukraine that have contacts in America or Europe can at least have friends send them money, which is cool. Thank you for the flowers. You can have friends send them money, which is nice with PayPal. That's good as well. So, all right, guys, 8:34. My voice is starting to go. I'm going to sign off. I got a little bit of a sore throat, or my from the surgery. I had no surgery to open things up, and they do something in the back of your throat as well. I don't want to be gross, but they burn something in the back of your throat. And I think that thing acted up last night, which was bad, because after I finished talking to you guys, I noticed it was sore in the back of my throat, but not like scratchy. So I'm going to call it quits now. I sound like I've got a cold, though. I hate this. I even took the 24-hour Sudafed, and it's not doing anything. And they told me, they said, you're going to have a week or two of this, but it's like when you have a cold and you really can't breathe, so you have a hard time sleeping. And I haven't had that in years. And anyway, it's driving me crazy. I will hang in there. Thank you guys. This has been lovely again. I have no idea about Western Union or how that works. But we will do tomorrow, 7 p.m. as always. We will do TikTok. We will do YouTube. And I think this is working pretty good. I'll try to get more moderators just to have them. And we'll go from there. So thanks, guys. All right. I'm signing off of TikTok. 800 of you are still there. Thank you for hanging out, by the way. 164 YouTube, 800 TikTok. Lovely people. Thank you. All right, TikTok, I'm saying goodbye. And now, and YouTube, goodbye to you as well. All right. Bye, guys. End broadcast.